What's up, friends? John Bush here. Got my good friend Derrick Broze.
What's up?
We're here at Flotefest and wanted to grab him. It's hard to grab. Everybody likes talking to this guy, slinging these shirts and these books, but I just wanted to chat with him about the work that he's doing, Exit and Build, the Freedom Cell Network, and just some of the bigger picture stuff that we've been thinking on. How you doing? You just wrapped up your tour in Mexico, yeah?
Yeah, we literally just in the last 2 days arrived across the border from Mexico. We did 6 weeks traveling across the country, 6 weeks, 17 events in 15 cities.
Wow.
And so we're back now in Texas for the month of May to do float and exit and build.
So I went to a couple of the stops on the US tour and followed along and watched the videos and stuff, and I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised to see in Mexico, it seemed like there was just about the same number of people turning out at a lot of the sites. What was your take on that, and what was it like? How many people showed up?
Yeah, so it definitely in some ways is comparable to the US turnout, not necessarily as big. And like for example, in the US, we had the biggest turnout was in the Bay Area, San Francisco. We had 150 people, which made sense to me because that was one of the places that was already doing vaccine passports and stuff. So there seems to be a correlation between the places that are being hit with the most tyranny and people ready to do stuff, or at least willing to come out to a meeting.
Was Brooklyn busy?
Brooklyn was a pretty good turnout, yeah. And then, so in the US, on average, I would say we were hitting 90 to 100 people, up to 150 people. And then there was a couple that were as low as 15 or 20.
Let's post up here.
And in Mexico, it was somewhat similar. I'd say more on average 50 to 70. We had about 100 people at our biggest stop.
That's a lot of people.
It's still like, especially for the first time. I mean, I've only been living in Mexico for 2 years. It's the first time I've ever toured. And it was cool though. I mean, I think that sometimes we forget, like for example, this is gonna go out onto the internet, and mostly maybe we just assume we're reaching US people, but even just random people I met, Mexican citizens living in Mexico, were like, oh, I've been following you for 6 years, man. I found you during this thing or this thing. It's like, wow, never even been to this city before, and there's somebody there who follows the work and was happy to come connect. And just like with the US tour, one of the big parts, it's called the activation tour, is to bring people together so they realize, oh my God, there's all these people in my community. I didn't thought I was alone. That's the main big thing. And then, okay, hey, if you came here tonight, I always make sure to tell everybody, if you see new faces, get emails, get phone numbers, exchange. Like, don't waste this opportunity, because the reason we do the Freedom Cell Network and the website is because people were having trouble finding each other years ago. But now as the movement's growing, that's not so much the only issue anymore. It's like finding people. Some people still feel alone, but you can now go to like either tour events or Flotefest or Exit and Build. There's a lot more opportunity to connect with people. So I think that's very key, like helping people realize you're not alone, helping them realize the opportunity. And then I've just been laying hard in the message of like, it's not enough to be awake anymore, if it ever was. Like, to me, just the activated term is really just catching on to me more and more, because not just because we call the Greater Reset activation, but it really, to me, it hits the point of what we're trying to do: motivate, activate, inspire. I don't really just want to spend the rest of my life giving talks and selling books just because it's a nice gig. Like, I would like to actually see the things implemented and actually
to relax,
and for the world to go. That's the whole reason. And so I want to just speak to the people who are most excited, most pumped, most activated, and thankfully we're meeting them in each city. And these are the people who are growing their own food, who are buying land together, who are educating their kids outside the school system, who are taking their healthcare into their own system, or taking their money out of the banks. Whatever moves they're making, they're doing concrete steps. And that to me is what the tour is about. That's what the whole work is about.
Hell yeah. One thing I've become super conscious about, because I've always been into like self-development literature and success stuff. And a lot of it has to do with limiting beliefs and mindset. So in your experience on the road in the US and Mexico, there are people that just get it and they're like, I see what other people are doing, I've done this, and they're just empowered, and it like starts building on itself. It's this momentum thing. Once you start having those little victories, you get the garden planted or you start a freedom cell or whatever. But there's still a lot of other people that they're just feeling really frustrated and overwhelmed, and for whatever limiting belief, money, where I live, my wife's not on board or whatever, they aren't getting activated. So in your experience, what are some of those objections, and maybe how can some people work through those objections? Because I think we ourselves are the only people that are preventing us from living that life, right?
No,
it's
absolutely.
Internal obstacles.
And that's why my work has always been about the conscious resistance and just the importance of the internal as well as the external, right? Because I think people who, right now what we're seeing in the last 2 years is a lot of people waking up to the physical realities. Oh my God, I'm under threat. My physical body's under threat. These people are trying to fire me, force to jab me, whatever, right? They feel that, and so there's a reaction. I'm moving to Texas. I'm moving to Mexico. I'm selling, people have quit their jobs. We've dealt with there's at least, I'd say, 10,000 Canadians that have come to Mexico to get away from all that stuff. People who've sold everything they own, picked up their homes, brought their children, and are starting a new life. So they're having a physical reaction because they see the physical tyranny, but maybe there hasn't also been some of that internal work, right? So then you do get some of the doubts and you get some of the fears. And I'd say, like, in the US and in Mexico, I'm seeing people who have now started settling back into a bit of complacency. I think a lot of people feel like it's over and things have gone back to normal, and they're kind of like, oh, they were super pumped about getting land in the beginning or getting out of the cities and whatnot, but now they're like, yeah, well, you know, now the mandates are ending and things, like, I don't have to worry about it. And I would hesitate to, I would caution everybody against, like, maintaining that idea, because, it's Agenda 2030, the Great Reset. This is a much bigger picture than just what's in front of us. So the point is that it is going to take overcoming some of our own doubts, fears, and insecurities and limiting beliefs. And I think that some of the most common are the ones that you hear too, that people are just, some people are in a defeatist mindset. Some people, like, and what I mean by that is some people think that they understand, they're awake, right? But they think that because they're so awake that, like, there's no way we can ever survive this. There's nothing we can pretty much do. Like, the Great Reset, Agenda 2030, like you said, Klaus Schwab says you'll own nothing and be happy. So obviously that's our destiny. There's nothing we can possibly do about it. So they've sort of already...
You think there's like an element of purposeful action as like social engineering to try to get people to think it's inevitable?
I do think that, I think that it's a balancing act, right? These people do have, I almost, for those who aren't familiar with the term of blackpilling, I almost blackpilled myself last week doing research. Blackpilling is like, you get so awake to the certain research topics that you really come to a point of feeling defeated, like it's hopeless, like there's no way. I spent a week researching the crimes of the intelligence community for my next documentary, and I came away sort of feeling that way.
They're like untouchables.
And so I for a moment I was like, this is what people are feeling, because I was just like, holy shit, man, all these different intelligence agencies done this thing over the last history. How do you stop that? How are we even getting land? It's just taking that all in, and I was like, oh, this is where people go. It's hopeless, like there's no way we can do this. And I do think that is part of the equation, that they want people to feel disempowered. They would love for us to argue with each other online, divide each other further, or to do nothing, because why are you going to grow food? They're not going to let you do that. Why are you going to buy land? They're going to come take it from you. They're going to Waco you. And look, guys, the reality is maybe those things are true, right? I fully do, for myself, take the awareness that maybe I will die in a bloody shootout on my property. Is that something I pray for or want? Not at all. But if that's the way I'd have to go, living the life that I want, then I would rather that than, like, okay, well, at least I died peacefully in my own bed as a slave. You know what I mean? Like, because
better to live on your feet than die on your knees.
What I've realized more and more too over the last few years, like, I've started waking up 12, 13 years ago, and these things cause me to research, okay, I don't want fluoride in the water. Let me start learning about how to have healthy, clean water, right? I don't want poison in my food. Let me learn about eating healthier and eating better food. All these things at first were a reaction, but over time, this has been about, like, no, I want to live in, line with permaculture principles. I want to build my own home. I want to grow my own food. It's just that I've discovered that this is a better way to live. So even if I woke up tomorrow and I was imagining maybe I really was a conspiracy theorist, none of this is real, I still would want to pursue this life. Even if they were out of the equation, like, completely. If the Great Reset went away and it was just nothing, I still want to pursue this life because I think it's a healthier, better way to live. And that's what I try to remember. So yes, is there a possibility we might fail? Of course. Is there a possibility they might come arrest us and lie about us and claim we're extremists? Sure. All kinds of things. We know that, Operation, we talk about the fusion centers, and they're already paying attention to freedom cells years ago.
HPD's got probably has your picture on the wall.
These things are all a reality, but my desire for the potential for change for my nieces and nephews, for your children, for the coming generations, is greater than my fear of what potential bad things could happen. You know what I mean? That's just all it comes down to.
And what we're trying to do here, people are often like, well, you can't do crypto privately, or they're going to insist that we use their central bank digital currency. People got to recognize that, like, we're the rebels here. The Rebel Alliance in Star Wars wasn't waiting for Palpatine's permission to do stuff. Like, that's the whole name of the game, is to live free, is to put that skin in the game. But more often than not, 99% of the stuff that we do is completely legal right now.
At the moment,
there's no risk at all.
Nothing we're doing or even promoting is illegal. And you're right, though. It's like I don't plan on complying. Yes, we know that they want to roll out central bank digital currencies, and maybe they'll eventually try to have a digital ID just to get on the internet and all kinds of stuff. We see them talking about these things. We see these potentials, but there's nothing in the cards that says you have to obey, you have to submit. But again, that's also gets to the point of what you and I talk about a lot, is that if you are ingrained in the system, then it will be harder to say no. And so maybe some of you who have that fear, you're thinking, well, I got a bank account, I'm plugged in 401k, I got $50,000 in debt. You might feel very much like, I'm still in the system. So if you're in that position, then maybe they can coerce you to comply. Maybe they can make you submit because they got, and this is one of the things I've been realizing with COVID is like they're going to find every vulnerability pressure point, and they're going to squeeze. It's like, hey, you want to work? Okay, we'll get the jab. You want to travel? Get the jab. And that was the first sign of them doing those tactics that we've seen in other ways, but now it's out in the open. We'll shut your bank account down, we'll shut your travel down, we'll take away your rights if you don't comply. At the moment, it was about a vaccine, but it could be about anything else.
Carbon allotment for the month.
You know, whatever they want, and they can start squeezing you in those points. And so that's why, like, even if you are in a position that you're still got most of you got both feet in the system, start taking steps to get out in different ways, whether that's the technology you use, where your money's at, how you make your money, where you all those different things. Look at your whole life in a holistic way and see in which ways can you start to take some steps towards freedom out of that. And I think that is one of the only things we really can do, right? Because it's not going to be, there's no perfect way to be totally free of the systems, despite what some people want to sell you out there. There's no magic words. There's no magic words. There's no affidavits. There's no lowercase letters that are going to save you. Like, we have to all try to get out of these systems as much as possible, and I think physically. And that's going to take work. One of the things I've been reminding people on tour is, like, you have to be adaptable. You need to, I think, and this is my belief, in order to thrive in the coming years, you need to be someone that's willing to challenge yourself. And again, going back to those doubts, fears, and insecurities, a lot of times I'll say at the talks, like, hey, how many people here thought, man, I don't even want to go to this event? Like, maybe I'll go to flotefest, but no, it's just more comfortable to stay home. I'll just chill in the AC.
Yeah, I think that all the time.
And then you do, sometimes you do it and you give into that, but other times, at least in my experience, you do go to the thing and you meet all kinds of people. You make, like, something comes out of it.
I can't believe I wasn't going to come to this.
But for some people, that's enough for them. Just that little doubt will creep in, and they're like, nah, maybe next year I'll go. And then they never go to the next stage. They're constantly in this static point. So if that's you got to get comfortable with getting out of your comfort zone. You might have to work with people that you might feel diametrically opposed to. You might have to learn new skills. You might have to move to a different city. You might have to, get a new job. Like, there are some, and again, people who are taking this serious, they are doing this. People are moving their lives across the world, across the country, across the state, who feel like that's the best move for them. And I mean, for all the people who've taken those steps, especially back in Mexico where I'm from, I mean, thousands of Canadians, Australians, Europeans, Americans, and it's just incredible. And every time I meet one of those people, I just tell them, like, thank you for being brave enough to do what you feel like was necessary for your family, because not everybody's willing to do that. You just picked up and sold all your shit came down here, like, to start a new life. Like, that takes a lot of courage, and that is what we need, that kind of courage right now.
Yeah. And you could think about that too when there's a small step, like learning cryptocurrency or quitting the job and pursuing entrepreneurship. Think about the folks that literally packed up their entire life, sold their house, and moved to an entirely different country, don't speak Spanish, learning to make it in Mexico. Think about what they've sacrificed, and then, sometimes there's little small baby steps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you're talking about risk and opting out and not complying. So I admire the fact that you're pretty much full-on agorist. No taxes, no bank account, like, you're doing it, right? Me, on the other hand, I'm doing it inside outside, where I file my 1040, got the business, accept credit card, but I'm also doing the crypto and building the Agora networks and stuff. So how challenging has that been? And what are some of the factors that, like, what are some of the values, or what made you go that far? Because, like, I think we all need to be working towards that. And one thing for people to note too is, like, the whole exit and build thing, we're working together to build the infrastructure to make it easy for people to transition without losing everything, right? But there's some people that are already up in transition. So what's that been like? Yeah,
and I think the way you said that is important, because some people will hear, like, some of the, I always like to preface my talks with, like, hey, when I say I don't pay tax, I don't do these things, I'm not here to preach that you need to live my lifestyle. That's not, like, the message. The message is just to say, like, here's what I'm doing. If you can take inspiration from any of these steps, find ways that you can in your own life, kind of aim in that direction, like you said, moving the goal that way. But it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. I kind of got lucky in the way that the only time I ever had a bank account was when I was 18 years old. I'm 18, opening up my first bank account. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I started overdrafting, like, fees and stuff. And I did that a couple times and I just kind of got sick of it. I was like, damn, I keep having to pay these people more money because I'm not paying enough attention, and I'm withdrawing and all that stuff. And that happened to me a couple of times. I think it was Bank of America. And then I just kind of got sick of it. I, like, paid my thing to get it back to zero, and I just canceled it.
So it wasn't even a philosophical thing?
It wasn't even, that was when I was just like 18 or 19. And then it was years later, like, after going on my whole journey and getting into activism, and then eventually, like, learning, like, and the Fed, agorism, etc., that then it clicked to me. It's like, oh, I'm already doing this, so I don't even, like, I was getting
It's easy
jobs
transition.
too, where like, okay, I could have started doing the bank account direct deposit, but since I'd already established that, it did make it easier. So as opposed to somebody who maybe, and I've met people like this who wake up midway through life when they've already got the 401ks,
yeah.
the whole thing, and they're fully, that's like more difficult. So I had that benefit of like, I was already mistrusting of banks and just like, you know what, I suck at this, so I probably shouldn't do it. And then once I started to wake up to it, it was like, yeah, I'm not going back. And then with the tax issue, same thing, I just sort of never established a relationship with them, is the way I'll say that. And it definitely makes things difficult to some degree. Like, so
You're talking about renting houses?
yeah, the last time I was in Houston, when I was living there. So I mean, I also have another strike against me, the fact that I have a felony. So like, you know, it's 17 years ago, but it still affects you
like
in
a
the
scarlet
normal
letter.
world. Yeah, exactly. If I go apply for a job, any normal job, or go to rent right now, then those are things that will come up. So that doesn't make things any easier. But even without that, the first things typically when you go to apply to, like, you know, can I get a rental here or a house or whatever, is people want to see pay history, like, you know, check stubs, things like that. Well,
They're
it's like,
thorough
I don't
these
get
days.
check stubs, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I get paid through crypto and PayPal, and if the person understands
I'll
PayPal,
show you my blockchain address.
yeah, I'm like, I can show you a printout of like blockchain payments, or like I can show you a printout of my PayPal history showing you that there's money coming
Yeah.
in. And sometimes people are willing to work with that, but a lot of times people are like, huh, what do you mean?
Yeah.
So I've literally had like, this is the process. Okay, hey, yeah, we'll fill out the application, then we'll just need to see your paychecks. And like, okay, I don't get paid that way. Can I do this? Like, okay, no. Do you have a tax record? Can you show us your payment history? And I'm like, I don't have that either. And then it's like, they start going further, like, okay, rental history. Well, most of the people I've been dealing with for the past few years have just been like word of mouth, people that I pay in cash, because that's the kind of lifestyle I want to live, which is great, but right, there's also no record of that, right? So then when you come and interact with somebody in that normal world who's used to dealing with people with a paper trail, that, you know, and I get it to some degree, it's like, I'm a complete stranger to this person.
Yeah.
Why should they rent to me? They have no reason
It's
to
like a
trust me.
reputation thing.
But that's, to me, is the crux of it, right? The only reason that people pay attention to those documents is because we've been indoctrinated to believe that somebody with a bank account or somebody that pays taxes is a real person. That's a responsible, you know, adult, a citizen, right?
Yep.
And so it's not even like that they really care what's in my bank account. It's just that association that, oh, I have a bank account, I must be an adult, I'm clearly a person,
Yep.
I have paperwork, look at me, right? And so it's those subtle things that I've questioned more and more over time. It's like, people have been trained to believe, trust governments and trust banks. Those are institutions that we generally can trust. And so if this person has a document from a government or a document from a bank, then they're a real person and you can trust them.
Yeah.
So we just need to establish, that's where I think the trustless relationships, or using, I mean, I thought about this years ago that you could have something like Hive or Steemit or any platform like that, where maybe every week when I get paid for my writing through crypto or PayPal, you know, I take a screenshot and I save it on the blockchain, the record of the transaction, and that's all the account is, just my weekly.
You
That
could
would
even
serve.
encrypt it, and then when you want to show it, you give them the key,
and that
they
would
all get
serve,
access
all
to
it would be would literally just be screenshots or records of every paycheck I have, and that would be nothing else on that account. So that would be a permanent record that couldn't be changed, and somebody who at least could understand blockchain could understand, like, okay, this establishes you do have money coming in, you are a real person, there's no need for the bank accounts. But at the moment, as John said, we're building those systems. So for me, I get to like experience some of the out on the edge, like, okay, there's no tool to do that yet, there's no thing to do that yet, and then try to encourage people like, say, Ramiro and others, like, hey, I'm seeing a need that what we're going to need when we get this far ahead. And in order for the rest of the people to come, like you said, they need to have an easier transition. So we're kind of like, I guess in a way, pioneering and pushing that, and then saying, hey guys, you know what? This is one tool we're going to need if we're going to survive without the banks. And then the tool gets established by the people with those experience and those skills, and then hopefully the flood of people come and the transition is much smoother and easier. You know?
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the kind of thinking that we need. That's what I call empowered thinking, instead of like victim thinking. The victim's like, oh, well, I couldn't possibly exist in civil society because you gotta have banks, gotta have a tax statement, blah, blah, blah. The empowered free person is like, okay, I recognize that there is a need for some sort of reputation system or transaction history to make sure someone is worthy of doing a financial relationship with, and we don't have those systems. So let's build those systems. And blockchain, with its immutable ledger that can't be changed and stuff, and it's decentralized, like there's a lot of opportunity there. Some of it gets into fourth industrial revolution stuff like blockchain ID, but there are opportunities for a sovereign blockchain ID. But what at the end of the day, I think the most valuable is that trust personal relationship, or at least I can vouch for this guy, he's friends with my friend or whatever. All right, before we wrap up, one more question. You're going to be speaking at the Exit and Build Land Summit coming up May 13th to the 15th. There's still tickets for in-person available, or you can watch online for free or do a virtual pass. Get day 3, exitandbuildlandsummit.com, exitandbuildlandsummit.com. If you could tell us what exit and build means, because you started this term, what it means to you, and then also talk about how important it is where you happen to reside when it comes to your freedom or the struggle, or what you even have to opt out from. Some people don't have to opt out for much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say, definitely, I encourage you, if you can, come in person to the Land Summit. It was a great event last fall, and it's just, especially if these ideas, the conversation we're having here is something that you resonate with, these are the kind of conversations that are going to be happening at the event, speakers, etc. So check it out. I think that what I'm going to focus on mainly at the event is going to be like, what is the premise of this whole exit and build idea. I put that phrase in my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, when I was outlining 3 different potential paths that I saw in the face of what we're now calling the Great Reset and everything. We didn't even have that term yet when I was putting the book out. It was announced later. But I could see, like, okay, here's some potential paths. One is just apathy. Like, let's just be defeatist. Let's just accept there's nothing we can do. And as I wrote in the book, I put apathy as death, because I think that's the only result that's going to come from that, whether you call that a spiritual death, a physical death, just choosing to do nothing.
That's when we actually fail, when we just give up.
Yeah, if you just give up. So that's one path you could choose, but I don't think anybody here is on that path. And then the other 2 strategies I came up with, one was just what I called holding down the fort. And this is kind of goes like the way you sometimes reverse it, build and exit. It's sort of a similar idea that maybe you're in a position where when it comes to physical location, like you do like Texas, for example, or you like the gun laws, or you feel like you're in a good space already. So, and you got local community, and you're trading goods, and you've got a crypto community, and you're growing your own food, and there's a good homeschooling community. Your needs are being met in a way that is good for your lifestyle. You don't really feel a reason to leave to go to Mexico or to Florida or wherever else, right? So then I call that just choosing to hold down the fort. And so if you're holding down the fort, either way, build freedom cells, get network, start doing it. And then the other idea was, well, if you're looking at a situation where your home front isn't that great, and maybe there's nobody around, a lot of people feel that way. Sometimes you just haven't met the right people, but sometimes you might be in a place where you are the only one with the same mindset you got. And that's where freedom cells come in. The idea of like, okay, let's find other people. Maybe look to the city over because it's more active. And sometimes people like you and I like to create and build things. A lot of people don't want to do that. They don't have the time, the energy. They want to just come join a scene that's already built, right? So instead of being the person in their hometown building for 2 to 3 years, they might want to just, the town over 2 hours away, they've already got a pop in the scene. I'm just going to go there and contribute my skills instead of spend 2 years slaving away building, Sure. So that might be the strategy. Then, the idea is you exit from that location and you build elsewhere. So that was kind of the original thing for me, is first thinking about in terms of physical, but also it does go into philosophical as well, because it's not just like physical location, it's exiting and building from systems that don't align with your values. That could be using a new search engine. That could be, buying your food from a local person instead of the grocery store. Like it's exit and build is more of a mindset. It's not just the physical location, although that is a big aspect of course, but it's just applying that. How can I make sure that I'm living in line with systems and relationships that do actually align with my values, right? So if my principles are, I want to, respect other people's self-ownership because I want that to be respected of me, then I make sure that the decisions I make and the relationships I have are always in line with that. I'm always respecting other people's sovereignty, etc., right? And if I'm participating in systems that don't align with that, then I try to ask myself, is there a way I can exit from that system and build a better one? And or, look, I don't have to build it. Somebody else has already built it. I can come support them. Like, for example, we're at FloteFest. If you want to exit from Facebook and YouTube, people have already built the Flote platform, flote.app, right? Like, you don't have to build it. Instead, you exit from those other platforms and you can build or support those who've already done it. And so that's kind of the idea, is just looking at these different areas in addition to our physical location, really thinking about, because I think that's the bigger picture, right? Because even if we're physically moving, we could still be making personal decisions that still support the technocracy. What I mean by that is, like, you could have land and growing your own food, but still maybe in other subtle ways still supporting the same systems. And that's of course up to each individual.
Like my Gmail address.
Little things like that. I mean, that's the thing, is it's just that it's convenient. That's what it really comes down to. And so many of us, I mean, these people have had monopolies for, a couple of decades now, right? So most people just like, okay, Gmail might have been the first email you ever got when you joined the internet.
You just stuck
with it, and that's where everything's at. And it's a pain in the ass to change and all these things. But again, going back to what we were saying earlier, that's where that doubt creeps in, right? It's like, I could switch over to this new platform, but damn, I got my whole work set up here, I got the whole thing there. And say, okay, well, are you willing, and this is up to each person, not for me to judge or tell you what to do, it's just like, that's that conversation. Am I willing to take a couple extra steps or learn a new platform or spend the extra time to figure it out so that I am a little bit more in line with my values. And that's up to each person, you know, but to me, it's like, I want to strive. There's no perfection, of course, but strive to be as much in line with that as possible. And yeah, sometimes you end up out on the fringes by yourself, and sometimes it's very difficult, but it feels good for me. And so that's why I do it. You know, it's not to like try to shame anybody else for their lifestyle or anything like that.
Right on.
And so I'm looking forward to sharing that and much more at the event.
Yep. All right, Big D. Thanks a lot. Let folks know the URL, and you got another speaking engagement that you're doing too?
So yeah, my website is theconsciousresistance.com. Documentaries, books, articles, all
10 years
there.
of content.
Lots of stuff there. Thepyramidofpower.net is my documentary series if you want to check that out. And I'll be speaking in addition to Exit and Build at this other event some of you might be interested in. It's called Next Steps, next-steps.info in Atlanta, Georgia. Del Bigtree, a bunch of other cool people. I'm not sure the full lineup, but similar mindset, solutions focused.
Cool. All right, peace everybody. Remember, Exit and Build Land Summit, we still got in-person tickets. Come shake Derrick's hand. He'll have his shirts and books and stuff selling there too. Exitandbuildlandsummit.com, and his website's theconsciousresistance.com. All right, peace and freedom. We're out.